Did you know Marvel secretly adapted one of the most controversial Spider-Man storylines of all time? From demonic deals with Mephisto to mutant powers, here are 10 massive differences in Spider-Man. Brand New Day. When Marvel Studios wiped everyone's memory of Peter Parker at the end of No Way Home, millions of fans thought it was a completely original MCU idea. But comic book readers knew the truth immediately. The MCU was adapting Brand New Day, one of the most controversial, game-changing, and influential Spider-Man comic book storylines ever written. Published back in 2008 across The Amazing Spider-Man issues 546 to 564, Brand New Day completely stripped Peter Parker of everything he owned and forced him to start from absolute rock bottom. Now that Spider-Man Brand New Day is finally in theaters, we're breaking down the 10 biggest differences between the iconic comic book arc and how Marvel Studios adapted it for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. From demonic deals to Daredevil, let's look at what changed, what stayed the same, and what it means for the future of the MCU.
Brand New Day launched back in 2008.
The first and most massive difference between the comics and the movie is how Peter Parker's life was erased. In the MCU, the reset happens out of pure heroism. Peter asks Doctor Strange to cast a spell erasing the memory of Peter Parker from the entire universe to stop a multiversal collapse. It's tragic, noble, and self-sacrificing. In the comics, it was far more controversial. In the 2007 storyline, One More Day, Aunt May was shot and dying. Desperate to save her, Peter Parker and Mary Jane made a literal deal with the devil Mephisto. In exchange for saving Aunt May's life, Mephisto erased Peter and Mary Jane's entire marriage from history. When Brand New Day launched in issue 546, Peter woke up single, living in a world where he and MJ had never been married, and nobody knew his secret identity. While fans hated the Mephisto deal in 2008, the MCU cleverly replaced the devil with Doctor Strange's spell, giving us the exact same status quo reset, but with a much better, more emotional story.
Oh, hello? You're still here? That's kinda weird. Anyway, hit subscribe. It helps a lot. Okay, thanks. Bye.
This brings us to difference number 2, Aunt May. The entire point of the comic book Brand New Day was that Aunt May survived. She was alive, healthy, and working as a dedicated volunteer at the FEAST homeless shelter run by Martin Lee. Aunt May served as Peter's emotional anchor while his personal life fell apart. The MCU inverted this completely. In No Way Home, Aunt May's death is the catalyst that forces Peter to grow up. Her iconic with great power, there must also come great responsibility. Speech replaces Uncle Ben's legacy in the MCU. So while comic Peter had Aunt May to go home to during Brand New Day, Spider-Man Brand New Day picks up 4 years later with a Peter Parker who is truly alone, still visiting Aunt May's grave, fighting crime full-time in a city that doesn't even remember his face. This makes the MCU adaptation significantly darker and more isolated than the original comics ever were.
Aunt May was actually alive during Brand New Day in comics.
Difference number 3, the suit and the powers themselves, and this one has a twist nobody saw coming. During the Civil War comic era preceding Brand New Day, Spider-Man wore the mechanical Iron Spider suit built by Tony Stark. But when Brand New Day started, Marvel writers stripped Peter of all high-tech armor, putting him back in his classic red and blue cloth suit with mechanical web shooters and web fluid mixed by hand. Here's where the movie actually goes the opposite direction. In Spider-Man Brand New Day, Peter's body is mutating. His DNA is changing to the point where he no longer needs synthetic web shooters at all. His webs are becoming fully organic, shooting straight from his wrists, alongside new physical side effects he can't fully control. That's a fascinating reversal. The comics stripped Peter of organic powers to make him feel more grounded and street level, while the MCU is pushing him further from his old technology and deeper into something new and uncontrollable. Same back to basics spirit, opposite direction on the actual powers. Difference number 4. The villains and the street-level Underworld. The comic version of Brand New Day introduced a wave of brand new villains to Marvel Comics. The biggest standout was Martin Lee, also known as Mr. Negative, a crime boss who could invert light and corrupt people's minds, operating directly out of the FEAST shelter. Brand New Day focused heavily on gang wars between the Maggia crime family and new superpowered mobsters. In Spider-Man, Brand New Day, Vincent D'Onofrio reprises his role as Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, as the film's primary antagonist, with Michael Mando's upgraded Scorpion serving as the secondary physical threat. Alongside a mysterious, mind-controlling figure the trailers have kept deliberately hidden. So while the comics used Brand New Day to introduce fresh new villains like Mr. Negative, the MCU is doing the opposite, bringing back an established Kingpin at the height of his power, now that his season of Daredevil. Born Again has left a very different kind of vacuum in New York's criminal underworld. Difference number 5 lies in the supporting cast, specifically Harry Osborn. In the 2008 Brand New Day comics, one of the biggest shocks was that Harry Osborn was suddenly alive again. Mephisto's timeline alterings restored Harry to life, making him Peter's best friend and roommate once more. Harry was completely cured of the Green Goblin persona and tried to live a normal life running a coffee shop. In Spider-Man, Brand New Day, Harry Osborn still doesn't exist. Peter's best friend remains Ned Leeds, played by Jacob Batalon, but just like comic Peter losing Harry, MCU Peter lost Ned's memory of him entirely to the spell. The film explores Peter quietly trying to rebuild that friendship with someone who has no idea they were ever close. Difference number 6. Who's actually in Peter's corner? In the Brand New Day comics, Peter had no special legal help. He was a freelance photographer scraping by, selling photos to make rent, completely on his own against the system. The MCU adds a wrinkle straight out of the Daredevil TV show. Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock has been Peter's confidential attorney since the post-credits scene of No Way Home, when Peter needed legal advice after his identity went public. In Spider-Man, Brand New Day, that relationship pays off. Murdock returns as Peter's pro bono legal counsel in one of his most substantial big-screen appearances yet, giving Peter at least one person in his life who still knows exactly who he is. So while comic Peter fought his battles totally alone, MCU Peter has a quiet ally in Matt Murdock, even if the rest of the city has completely forgotten him.
Charlie Cox returns as Matt Murdock.
Difference number 7. The romance. When Brand New Day kicked off in 2008, Marvel aggressively tried to move Peter on from Mary Jane Watson. The comics introduced a brand new love interest, forensic officer Carly Cooper, while also bringing back a flirty, dangerous dynamic with Black Cat. Mary Jane was kept out of Peter's life for a long stretch of the run. In Spider-Man, Brand New Day, Mary Jane, played by Zendaya, doesn't remember Peter or their relationship at all because of the spell, forcing him to reconnect with her as a virtual stranger. The film also introduces Sadie Sink as Jean Grey, tangled up in the film's central mystery, adding a genuinely new dynamic the comics never had during this specific storyline. So while the comics moved Peter toward new love interests by choice, the MCU forces him into it, MJ is still the center of his heart. She just doesn't know it anymore. Difference number 8. The style of threat haunting the streets. Brand New Day grounded Spider-Man in local New York crime, mobsters, bank robbers, and street gangs. After editors felt he'd become too cosmic and overpowered, Spider-Man, Brand New Day grounds him in a different way. Alongside Kingpin and Scorpion, the film brings in a clan of masked ninjas resembling the Hand, tying directly into the fallout from Daredevil. Born Against ending. It's still street level in tone, but with a distinctly supernatural edge the comics didn't have during this arc. Difference number 9. How the city sees him. In the comics, Brand New Day launched with police hunting Spider-Man for the mysterious Spider Tracer murders. Jonah Jameson wouldn't become mayor of New York until years later, in the Big Time era, but even before that, he turned public opinion hard against Spider-Man. In Spider-Man, Brand New Day, the city's relationship with him has flipped entirely. After years as an anonymous protector, Spider-Man is seen receiving the key to the city, a far cry from being hunted as a menace. It's a rare moment where the MCU actually gives Peter more public goodwill than his comic counterpart ever got during this era. Finally, difference number 10. The stakes. The original Brand New Day comic storyline was explicitly designed to lower the stakes, grounding Spider-Man back in local street crime after he'd gotten too cosmic. Spider-Man, Brand New Day starts in that same grounded space, but escalates fast, eventually pulling in a rampaging Hulk and a mystery threat tied to mind control that pushes the film into much bigger territory by its final act. Once again, the movie takes the comics back to basics premise and uses it as a launching pad for something far larger. When you compare the 2008 Brand New Day comic arc to what Marvel Studios just delivered, it's clear the MCU took the emotional core of a controversial story, a lonely Peter Parker fighting for a city that forgot him, and built something both faithful and completely its own. Which version of the reset hits harder for you? The 2008 comics Mephisto deal, or the MCU's Doctor Strange spell? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this comic versus movie breakdown, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more deep dive Marvel breakdowns. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.